All right, time to do a little bit more gameplay research. We're going to most likely focus mostly on both Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. I don't even know if I have 3 installed on this PC, to be honest with you. I might not. So if anything else, we might be like looking at Birth by Sleep or something like that. Maybe I've got Final Chapter Prologue for Dream Drop, but I wouldn't have a save file for it, so it's kind of worthless. So 1 and 2 is mostly what we're going to be doing today. It's probably not going to be a totally very long stream because, frankly, my neck is killing me. Man, I don't know. I slept at a weird angle last night or something. So sitting behind my PC for any length of time in this chair is kind of the worst. I have a little like pillow added in for like neck support, which helps a bit, but not much. So we'll see how we go. I need to remember to like lean back and actually like rest on the pillow instead of like being hunched forward. It's a general thing. It's just good for posture, of course, but especially today. So yeah, what we're going to be doing is I'm just going to kind of run into groups of enemies and see how they behave as a group. Because obviously we've done this with boss fights and checking one boss fight, seeing how it works, the way that it like moves, the way that it waits, the way that it attacks, that's one thing. And that's been really like educational to do because it's really informed the way that I ended up programming the behavior tree or state tree for the boss fight that I've been working on. But I've not only been working on boss fights, I've also been working on general AI improvements for like the grunt enemies, to just a normal mob, like goons, right? The gooners. So I kind of need to figure out how they work in these games as well. And since I'm basing my combat very much off of Kingdom Hearts 2 more so in a way, but actually Birth by Sleep mostly. So maybe we actually should take a look at Birth by Sleep now that I think about it. It's a good thing to just take a look. So let's just walk into this room and see what ends up happening. These are Neo Shadows. These are a special kind of Heartless that are specifically programmed to function one specific way and be a extra challenge because it's a rare Heartless spawn. So we actually, that's not too useful. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to just go into a couple of different worlds, just run into a room and see how the enemies behave there. And then I'm also going to go into the Colosseum afterwards to see if the enemies behave differently, significantly, within the Colosseum. Because obviously the Colosseum is a place where groups of enemies are specifically put together to be fought in like groups. So maybe they have specific different behavior there. I kind of doubt it, but it'll be interesting to take a look. I'm not going to go to Neverland because that's a little too close in space. I think I'm just going to go to Hollow Bastion, and maybe we'll go to like Deep Jungle or Agrabah or something like that. I want a space where there's quite a bit of room for me to run around while the enemies kind of like do their thing. And I think there's a couple of places here in Hollow Bastion that'll give me just that. So like the Castle Chapel. Well, the Castle Chapel itself obviously doesn't have any enemies in it, but if we go in here to the place where you fight Rico Ansem, and we skip past that enemy because this is very much one that doesn't have a lot of room. The map that is, but here there's a couple of enemy spawns that just, what do they do, right? How do they function? Because I don't know, for the most part, they kind of seem to just operate on their own. I have the distinct feeling that some of their AI, not like piling up on Sora, might also just kind of rely on the fact that they take either at random or some kind of determinism, one of the other party members as their target. Which obviously I don't have that. So if that's what actually hit me there, the fuck? So if that's part of the consideration, that's not something that I can replicate, obviously. There's also the fact that Donald and Goofy are killing these things before I can actually like analyze them properly, which is a bit annoying. But for the most part, they don't really seem to have any like major overarching like group logic to them so far. They very much do seem to operate pretty much independent from each other. And they just happen to spawn in as a group. That guy's annoying, so I'm just going to get rid of him. Which is not good news. Because that means that there's no real like secret source to the way these things work. That I've been missing out on. It just means that my AI itself needs to be improved. Which, obviously, we knew that already, but I was kind of hoping that there was like a secret component to it that I was missing that would maybe help me improve the group dynamic, but I don't know. Doesn't really seem like it, does it? What I'm mostly trying to look for is, do they attack at the same time, or do they have some type of like attack queue? Because that's the solution that I've been thinking about myself, is implementing a attack queue where enemies request attacking and then they await from like the game mode permission to execute that attack. It doesn't seem to very much be the case here. Again, there is something to be said for the fact that they seem to very much be piling onto Donald and Goofy, in a way. So what the fuck are these fucking invisible things, man? Seriously, what are these? What's going on with these? Are these rare spawns or are these just bugged? Oh, these are rare. Oh, okay, those are just rare spawns. Okay, fair enough. I know one or two other places here in Hollow Bastion specifically that might be able to help us figure something out. One of which is right here. There's a lot of enemies here. Okay, so let's take a look at these. Do they in any sort of way like wait around? No, not really. I don't think so. Yeah, those two just attacked literally in sync, so... Honestly, I kind of feel... like the only reason that they are not like piling on is because they just have a random amount of downtime between their attacks, which will naturally like desync them from piling up onto you. But aside from that, they pretty much seem... First and foremost, they pretty much all seem always aggressive. Right? That's not something my enemies have. My enemies have this like normal patrol state where they don't see the player. So they're just patrolling around. Which is a bit stupid because most of my enemies only spawn in just like these enemies once you get close enough. Well, they are always spawned in, but they get activated, right? So... But there is a mechanic in Kingdom Hearts here where I'll show you, where if you go far enough away, they don't go after you, right? Because that's the thing that you use in the speedrun. You like glide over here, which despawns most of the enemies. There we go. So you can pick up this Haste 2 gummy. But if you're not quick enough, because you don't have super glide yet, if you're not quick enough getting away, what ends up happening is one or two of those wyverns can follow you here, and you need to take them out, which takes obviously a bit of time, which is annoying. So that's usually why you cast Stop on them to freeze them, and then you glide away. Or stop and then like one or two gravities to really ensure that they're stuck. But if you mess that up, they do follow you here. So there is something about their AI that is always aggressive, but also there is some leniency in their aggressiveness. So if I just go all the way over here, do they follow me? It seems like it is a line of sight thing more so than is it just a distance thing? I think it is a combination of line of sight and distance. I guess the question is, if we slowly lure an enemy throughout an entire map, does it at some point just decide to stop following us? Because if that is the case, it clearly is just a line of sight thing. Or just a distance thing, rather. So let's reload this map and give that a shot. Because we very much can just get this wyvern to follow us like very slowly. And I actually know for a fact that we can make him follow us all the way over here. Because that's the issue with the speedruns, is they can follow you throughout effectively the whole length of the map. So that does imply that it is a line of sight thing. Once they don't have line of sight to you, they lose interest, and if they lose interest and you're far enough away, they seem to despawn. Because if I just like break their line of sight without going far enough away, they don't despawn, I think. Because they don't have line of sight to me, clearly. But they also... Well, there's only one of them. Hold on. Don and Goof kind of carried away there. You should get unstunned any moment now. Presumably, right? Stun doesn't last forever in the game, does it? It does last for a freaking long time, though. Okay, so it actually straight up is a line of sight thing. I think. Donald and Goofy, here, with me. It's kind of tricky to figure this out with Donald and Goofy screwing up their AI. So what I'm thinking is maybe it actually is better to go to Kingdom Hearts 2, because I can final form and get rid of them. Or Birth by Sleep, where you just don't have party members to begin with. But if I go through here, I call Donald and Goofy to me. Is there a way for me to just like murder Donald and Goofy? I guess there actually is. Hold on. I have an idea. I have an idea as to how I can easily get rid of these two. I can just load my level 1 save file and they will die instantly. Which will make them a non-factor. Which I can also do in Kingdom Hearts 2, actually. So that's probably the way that I'm going to check that game out as well. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. I knew that doing a level 1 run was going to be useful some way, somehow, someday. It's kind of messed up that you can't load game from within a save file. You need to go back to the main menu and load game. Not a fan of that. Even my game, I think. Well, is that true? No, my game doesn't do that either. Never mind. My game, you also need to go back to the main menu. I probably should fix that. I probably should allow you to just load game from like the gameplay menu. Hello, why can't I? Thank you. So level 1, where are you? There you are. That's going to make things significantly easier. Well, no, it's not easier, but that's the point. They should die quickly. Because look at the amount of HP we all have. This is like a... You get hit, you die type of deal. So, going back to Hollow Bastion. And seeing... No, not normal drive. And seeing how this changes things. That's right, in this if I never actually went to the library. Yeah, you can entirely skip the library in just like a normal playthrough through the game. Because of the Dumbo trick that you saw me do earlier. You don't have to actually ever enter the library. And the only other reason that you would go to the library in this game would be... hold on, I can glide over this, right? With a properly timed glide, I think you can get over this. You should be able to, but I'm... Maybe not. I thought you could. And the only other reason to ever go to the library is to get Kuraga. But if you look at the amount of HP that I have, I think you know why I don't have an upgraded healing spell, because it literally doesn't matter. I'm tracking line of sight thing, so there's actually a terrible map for that. Alright, well, don't let Goofy die without letting me die. Which actually is easier said than done. Okay, don't let Goofy are dead. Just as planned. Then I spawn in these enemies over here and I hide behind the corner. Do they lose interest? They do! Oh, but that one doesn't. And that one doesn't either. So... Do they... they probably do. So what they probably do, because this is just how like a lot of creature AI works in video games, once they lose line of sight, what they probably do is they probably try to move to the last known position of the player. At which point, if they regain line of sight, they will resume chasing you. And if they don't regain line of sight, they'll stop chasing you. That's probably what they're doing, if I had to guess. My enemies don't do that. My enemies are a lot more dumb at the moment. They just have line of sight to the player, or they don't. Which also means that if you just dodge out of their like view cone, they immediately lose all semblance of remembering that they were fighting you. So it's probably a good thing to implement their AI to do that last known position searching. I could even go a tiny step further if I wanted to and make it like search in a random position within that range if they don't even find you. But I don't think I need them to be that intelligent. Anyway, me and my friend are decided to make a horror game in Unreal Engine 5. It's a big project. We have a game design document and I started the project today. Do you have any tips? If it's a big project and you're just getting started with it, do try to keep some semblance of like scope control, because the scope is going to creep up. It always is. No matter how tight your game design document is, no matter how planned out your development like roadmap looks like. I've very rarely met people who work on game dev, at least on an indie level. I don't know about AAA, because I don't know many people in AAA. When I say many, I mean none. But at least like on an indie level, I've rarely to never met people that start a project with a scope and end that project with the same scope. It always creeps up. And I think that's just also part of the creative process. That's not necessarily a sign of inexperience, as many people might like say it might be. To a certain extent, it could be. Because the more experienced you are, the finer you will be at the like deciding up front what you need and how you're gonna like dedicate your time. But even once you've done like years and numbers of projects, there's always going to be the one thing that you halfway through development decide to add and that kind of stuff. So it's mostly a matter of deciding how to deal with that and pre-planning for that eventuality to happen, because it will. So if you have a very tight schedule of we want to produce this game within 2 years, aside from that schedule needing some room baked in, just saying 2 years as a random number, it might be longer, it might be shorter, but you need to bake in some time for things to just go horribly wrong. And you need to bake in time for things that you hadn't pre-planned for. So if you plan to develop a game in a window of 2 years, assume that it's going to take 3. So that's pretty much the biggest thing, I would say. If you're like starting on a decently big project. Because I've been thinking about that myself as well, because the project that I'm working on obviously is fairly big. And I have this idea for every dungeon to have like a total like genre shift. And I've been working on like placing art assets and like texture painting and foliage painting for the last 3 days, and I've done 5 levels. And it's kind of made me think that, okay, this is not even like final polished stuff by any means. But the scale at which I'm making this game and the amount of effort that it takes to actually like deliver what I'm trying to create, maybe having entirely like different sub games, even if they're super simple in every single dungeon, is stupid. Because they're also going to all require their own art and their own like programming, obviously, and their own everything. So maybe I should just dial it back and keep it at like a mini game level more than an entire like genre shift kind of deal. So yeah, but that's kind of my rambling about that. Anyway, let's take another look at this. Oh no, they're back alive! Well, they'll die fairly quickly. Yeah, so what it seems like happened there, they need to die. Guys, can you just kill my party members, please? You're all insanely bad at everything. Why is Donald suddenly healing things, by the way? Donald never heals. Donald, stop healing! Probably also shouldn't give him items, to be fair. Well, actually, that was kind of useful, because he wasted some items on me there. I wish I could just whack him with my weapon and kill him. That would be ideal. But yeah, as far as group AI goes, I think they do just kind of work independent from each other. Oh, they're dead, and so am I. So that's a couple of interesting lessons. I think the searching AI needs to be better. And I think they just straight up don't have a passive mode. Because once they decide that they don't know where I am, they just fuck off. Right, they don't stick around to like wander around or anything, they just leave. Can you not? I'm trying to do stuff without you two. Yeah, so they don't have direct line of sight to me, but they still have a concept of where I am. If I stand there, but if I stand here, they try to find me where they lost me, which is over at that pillar over there, that one. But now this pillar is obfuscating me still. So once they get to that position, they still can't see me and they disappear. So I think that kind of proves my theory about the last known player location type of deal. That said though, those two are just like hanging around. What are they doing? They might be searching for Donald. Are they at some point just going to give up though? If they can't find their pathing to what they're looking for, are they just going to give up and despawn as well? Or do they never get to their new position and get stuck in this state as a result? I think they're just stuck. Yeah, they seem to be. So it's not even a timing-based thing, it's just... So their state flow probably goes... Spawn in. Pre-activated to be aggressive toward the player. Whether that be Sora, Donald, or Goofy. In my case, I only have one player. Go to your attack range of that player for melee enemies. That's right up next to you. For things with projectiles, obviously, that is a different range. And attack. If you don't have the player within your line of sight anymore, try to go to the last known player location. If you found the player in that time, resume your normal behavioral loop. If you didn't find the player by the time you get to the last known player location, you despawn. Which despawning effectively just means that they get reset to their origin position. And deactivated again. I think that is the basic AI loop that at least these enemies in this game run on. Which makes sense as to why the Colosseum might actually be somewhat more difficult, because there's no way for them to lose line of sight of you, because it's just one arena, right? And on top of that, it seems like there is no overarching AI system that decides or directs enemies in any way. Not that I can detect anyway. Okay, that's interesting. So those guys were just messing around. until I got close enough to their spawn range, and then they actually teleported back to their spawn. I'm going to just say that what we saw was buggy behavior, and that's not like intended behavior for what they should be doing. It's these fucking invisible things again, man. Yeah, so let's actually go to the Colosseum and see what that's like. I actually think that the best way to get to a save point is to get to the start of the world. Because that's probably going to be the easiest place for me to study large numbers of enemies within a fairly open area. Where Donald and Goofy will also super easily die. Actually, I've got a better idea. We don't even... The Colosseum is the perfect place to get rid of Donald and Goofy. I just realized. Because you can enter these cups without Donald and Goofy. You've got the option of just doing their Sora. That's the way that you unlock one of the ultimate weapons for these two. I think it's Save the King. You unlock that by doing, I think, the Hades Cup as Sora alone. So yeah, that's 100% what I should have been doing this entire time. Again, there's certain things you just can't test there, like that line of sight type of deal. So we definitely still did learn something. But yeah, probably should have thought about it a little earlier. And in Kingdom Hearts 2, we have different methods of getting rid of our party members as well. So it's probably fine. Do I have Unreal open still? No, but I have Rider open, so I can compile fairly easily. Okay. I'm just going to start with the Fill Cup. And then we'll see how we go. I would prefer doing the Hades Cup like seat 40 or something like that, but this is quite enough enemies anyway. So let's just lock onto one and then just kind of look at what they do. They all effectively are clumping up, trying to just all scramble to get to me. But not quite, right? Because there's that one dude over there that's just licking his ass. Or scratching his ear or whatever he's doing. But again, I think that's not a overarching AI system telling it to calm down because there's too much happening on top of me. I think that's literally just a temporary idle state that these specific Heartless sometimes get to be in. Because aside from that, they're all like constantly... Well, you see they synced up there for a little bit doing that. They all seem to mostly just constantly be chasing toward me. And the only thing that breaks that up is the fact that they sometimes do like a little idle thing. Which that in of itself still is valuable to think about. Because maybe instead of the patrol state as I have it right now, I should just have them go into an idle state. And if they're all always aggressive toward me, having one enemy sometimes go into an idle state if you've got like 10 on your ass, probably not going to like break gameplay. Right now, enemies spawn in groups of like 3, 4, or 5. And if one of them just decided randomly to sit down and scratch his ass, that would be kind of weird. But if they start being in groups of like 7, 8 to 10, I think that probably isn't that big a deal anymore. And having everybody just at all times aggressive toward you is probably the way to go. So yeah, that seems to be at least how Kingdom Hearts 1 handles it. Let's just murder these fools and move on to a different group of enemies, just to see if different enemies maybe behave differently in any way. I kind of figure that this is probably the way that all the AIs work, at least on like a fundamental level. But we've got some of the magic dudes here, right? That's an interesting thing to take a look at. I'm fairly certain that they would work the same way because they are annoying as shit. These like Requiem and whatever they're called. They have a name for the type of enemy. I forget what they are. But they still very much all seem to, yeah, always just be aggressive toward me. Again, which makes these annoying, because they are very easily dealt with. So they usually spawn in, like, groups of 5. Like, 5 to 8 at a time. So, interestingly enough, this is kind of interesting, right? That means that base enemies are more aggressive than boss fights. Because boss fights have more openings for you to attack them, unless you're like Sephiroth or Zonus. The boss fights generally leave some room open for you to attack them. And these guys also have like short idle states, but much, much, much less than a boss fight does. But they're obviously more easily taken care of, and the attacks they do are more easily dodged and taken care of in that regard as well. You can even see it within this group, is the feet are part of a boss fight. They're just the feet that God Armor has, usually. And those feet end up, like, staying still and doing nothing a lot more than the Power Wilds. So that is quite interesting. This round we'll just kind of skip because we've already looked at these like Red Nocturne and Yellow Operas. They're just annoying little shits. The large body is actually an interesting interesting thing, because we haven't looked at that yet. So he does his belly flop attack. And then he just immediately goes into another belly flop attack. And if I'm too far away, presumably what he does is he just like tries to get to me. It's kind of whack that they do seem to just attack when they're out of range. I don't know why they do that. I guess to also break up their AI from just chasing you down. And it kind of seems like they all have an attack that is more or less designed to work decently well at a distance. So that if they do it once like a timer runs out for like chasing, I presume they have just a random timer when they start chasing you after a certain amount of time. If they haven't reached you yet, they just do the ability anyway. They seem to have abilities specifically made to have a as big as possible chance to hit you, maybe? Because Power Walls have that jumping attack. Then again, the sliding attack definitely closes more distance, so they might just be doing one at random. But the large body there has that like jump attack, right? Large body also seems to have an AI where he does 2 attacks at the same time, or back to back. Yeah, so his ability actually is just doing both. Or at least he does 2 abilities. Because he does that jump at a distance, and then he immediately does the belly flop. I did see him do 2 belly flops back to back, but that's probably just when you're... No. When you're close is what I was going to say, but apparently not. Okay. When you're just literally on top of him, he doesn't like immediately attack either. So he actually does have some kind of wandering pattern to his AI. Because what he seems to just always do is attack. No, but there he attacks twice in a row. So, funnily enough, he's actually less aggressive when you're close to him. Because when he's close to you... Nope, he just does them back to back. I don't know what the logic behind him is. Suppose it's just randomness at that point. But yeah, that ability specifically that he just did, the swinging arms one, he only does when you're right next to him. So they at least have selected abilities that they do if they're not close enough to you after like either wandering or chasing or whatever. Things that have a bit of range to them. So let's real quick what we've gotten so far. That is the enemies are effectively, as long as they're spawned in, they're aggressive. Passive enemies are not a thing in Kingdom Hearts 1, at least. And aggressiveness means that they are always trying to chase you down. And if they can't find you, they go to the last known location. And if they can't find you there, they just despawn. They don't hang around in a passive state, they just go away. While aggressive, they seem to sometimes have a bit of an idle state. Presumably to break up the mass of things just chasing you. And they also have a chase timer, it seems. Which also breaks up the chase. Well, actually, in this case, I can look at the large bodies a little bit easier. Because these are still kind of confusing me, not gonna lie. For the most part, they seem to just do 2 attacks in a row. With sometimes they just do 1 attack. Sometimes they do 2. Might just be random. Feels random at this point. Okay. I'll just do this with 1. So that I can actually focus. That attack specifically, he didn't do before, does he? Is it an attack for a normal enemy that unlocks at an HP threshold? That would be interesting. But that is also an attack that just works on whatever range you're at, right? Yeah, I guess these large bodies have kind of like a desperation state. to themselves? Which is usually a thing that only bosses have, right? Huh. That's kind of wild. Okay, we know the power wilds, that's okay. Actually, guard armor pieces are boss AI anyway. I don't really care for those either. Yeah, they are actually classified as boss pieces. Okay. I think. Otherwise that would have done more damage. No, probably wouldn't have actually. Oh, anyway. Yeah, I don't think there's anything anymore in this cup that is of any particular use. That's definitely a boss, right? Yes. Fair enough. Also, Sora is a lot less sticky than I remember him being, but that might just be a Kingdom Hearts 1 versus Kingdom Hearts 2 thing. But I kind of feel like we figured out what I wanted to figure out in Kingdom Hearts 1. So I'm going to actually make some notes of that for myself. Real fucking quick in a quick little notes list. Let me open it up real quick. Where even is it? Okay, there we go. So what do we have? We had enemies don't go passive. They're always aggressive. And if they can't find you, they despawn. Enemies use last known player location method for chasing you. While chasing you, they have a timer to do an attack or one of a few. That's my mind blanked there for a moment. Holy shit. Breaks up back chasing. Attacks designed to do damage at distance or over area of effect. Sometimes they do an idle instead during chase or after attack to prevent too much aggression at once. That's pretty much what we learned here, right? I think that's pretty much what we learned. So that's been Kingdom Hearts 1. Now we go to the game with more polished combat. So the enemies might work differently. There's also a game where they throw more enemies at you at once. And that game is known as Kingdom Hearts 2. So the AI might work significantly differently. And then we've also got Birth by Sleep, if we want to take a look at that as well. I presume that it works fairly similarly. I'm not going to take a look at chain memories for obvious reasons. I hope the reasons are obvious anyway. Why is it not getting my input? It's really annoying. Alright, I don't have level 100. Oh, I do have a level 100 file. Never mind. Let's do that then. Alright, so where do we go for easy enemy analysis in this? I suppose actually the Cavern of Remembrance might be a pretty decent place to do that. Or just Olympus Coliseum again. But this also might be a pretty decent place to do that. So let's take a look. How do these guys operate? Well, the Hollow Bastion security drones are actually kind of interfering with this whole dealio, but largely, so far, they seem to work the same way. Let me go to a place where there's no security drones. This type of game again. Well, I mean, this is the type of game that I'm making, so yeah. Alright, let's see how these guys work. Seemingly in fairly similar ways. They just are like chasing, but these don't seem to really give up on chasing. These actually seem to only really change state when they get to you. Unless they are like the Morningstar over there and they have an ability that can like close the distance. That said, these enemies specifically might be designed kind of weirdly because they're the main enemy that you fight within the 1000 Heartless battle. So they might not be a good reflection of how AI in general works for this game. So maybe we just need to go to a different world real quick. Which would be... Halloween Town be a good thing to check? I have no idea. Play Minecraft with you? No. No, I don't think I'm going to do that. Land of Dragons might actually be a good place to do this. We used to have like a little Minecraft server for the Discord, but at some point I was like, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. Thumbling Goofican, please go away, thank you. Those are also like, not quite mini bosses obviously, but they're big enemies. Which seem to have more boss-like AI, which is still interesting to note. So yeah, these seem to work more so in the same way, where after a while of chasing you, they just decide to start attacking, maybe? Or do they just... Do they just chase? Like, endlessly? I don't think they do. Well, they might. It seems like they just chase endlessly in this game. But they also sometimes like just throw in a quick like little idle animation, which is probably their way of breaking up the like pack of chasers. But that's a lot more straightforward in the way that it works. Anyway, how does generation work in Deep Rock Galactic? I don't even know that game, so I don't know. How do they generate identical instances on the map that looks so different depending on the neighbor blocks? I don't know how the game works, but I would imagine that they use a version of wave function collapse for that, which is effectively, if you've ever seen a tile map editor, where you can just select the type of tile and it selects the edges as being one type of sprite and the insides of another type of sprite and corners are another type of sprite. That's essentially what wave function collapse is. I don't know why it's named that, to be honest with you. But effectively what that is you set up rules for a tile, and this can be done in 3D as well, obviously. It's just a bit more complex in 3D. You set up rules for a tile when it's neighboring another tile of a certain type. It should look a certain way. And instead of with sprites, you can do this with 3D models, and you also need to like start setting up rules for 3 dimensions instead of just the 2 dimensions that you would have in a tile map. But what is the engine used for the game you're playing? I have no idea. I think this is just an in-house engine that Square Enix has that they use for the old Kingdom Hearts games. The more modern ones are Unreal. Like Kingdom Hearts 3 is Unreal Engine 4. They have a rhythm game that's made in Unity. Some Final Fantasy games are Unreal. Some of them have like in-house engine stuff as well. It kind of differs what Square uses for their engines. Like the Final Fantasy VII remakes are Unreal Engine 4. Whereas Final Fantasy 16 is a in-house engine. Yeah, so these enemies specifically have... Oh, fuck, my drive form ran out. Those enemies seem to have more abilities that can let them hit you at a distance. So maybe I need more of that as well. But let me recharge my drive real quick by cheesing the fuck out of the game. Subway Surfers made an Unreal Engine and uses Illumina Nanite? What the fuck? Really? It's a waste of resources. That doesn't seem like it needs to do any of that. Matter of fact, that seems like it should be made in Unity. Maybe. Not to say that Unreal can't do mobile games, but I don't know. It's kind of like the preconceived notions that you have of Unreal and Unity, I guess. Where Unity, like any mobile game, I just kind of assume is Unity made. Just sharing misinformation for today. Ah, that makes a lot more sense. It probably is a Unity game then. That adds up a lot more. Alright, let's see how these fuckers deal with chasing me. Yeah, so these ones really don't seem as complex anyway in their AI. It actually seems like Kingdom Hearts 2's AI is more simplistic than 1. Which is maybe because they tend to spawn in more enemies at the same time. So making it too crowded would probably kind of suck. What I want to do now is see if I can make them despawn, because it kind of feels like these might also not despawn if I break line of sight. I mean, can you please die? Did they despawn? Okay, they did despawn actually. He's stuck behind a rock. That's how intelligent these guys are. Alright, let's try it with these. If I just go stand behind this rock, they don't have line of sight, right? I can't help but feel that these actually work less intelligently. Because I very much do think that they actually always are just moving toward the player, line of sight be damned. Which for the world design of Kingdom Hearts 2 actually makes sense, because everything is so flat and open for the most part that line of sight probably actually isn't a big factor. In most levels, like the one that I'm in right now is probably one of the levels that has most issues with line of sight. And Underworld there's also a couple of places. Let me go ahead and check that out. Gameloft used Unreal for 2 games though, and Supercell creators of Clash Royale? Really? Huh. Oh, they used it for our latest game, not for Clash Royale itself. Alright. Again, this is a place that's easily used to break line of sight, so let's see how they deal with that. I mean, it's not quite fair, because I'm also up higher now, I guess. But once line of sight is broken, I think they just... Okay, they just vanished. Let's keep an eye on these guys, break their line of sight, and see what happens. I guess line of sight breaking in this game just more or less despawns them right away. Because the game kind of assumes that you're too far away anyway, because everything is so flat. Okay, line of sight breaking for these enemies. How did they deal? I think this game functions more on distance than view codes. And I don't love that, so I'm not going to do that probably. Yeah, they just try to go through there to get to me because I'm still close enough for them not to have despawned. It's literally just the distance thing in Kingdom Hearts 2. Yeah, okay, so this seems fairly easy to figure out. It's just a matter of distance. There's no line of sight check-in. Well, there is for the aggressive, well, the player menu thing, I think. Yeah. So, okay, so that's kind of weird. So the enemies don't have a concept of line of sight, but the player does. So far what I'm seeing here, I don't think I love that. Alright, with that said, the spawning and despawning mechanics, just being based on distance, I don't think I'll like. Because the dungeon designs in my game probably aren't as well put together as most Kingdom Hearts 1 maps, don't get me wrong, but they share a lot more in common. Is a 2002 game a good source to get your inspiration, though? Yes. Yes, it is. 2002 is not like some distant past where games all sucked. If you ask me that about like 1982, maybe we could have a discussion. But 2002 is like solidly in like the golden age of the PlayStation 2, where so many good games were made. Like 2003 specifically, 1 year later only, is one of the best years in the history of like gaming. Wait, what? Oh, I didn't do the normal cops yet. So, yeah, no, the fact that the game to take inspiration from is older. Again, the AI behavior in Kingdom Hearts 1, which, yeah, is like 3 years older than what I'm playing here, seems more sophisticated than what they do here. So, like, the age of a game, to a certain extent, doesn't matter that much. Obviously, like, maybe don't take things like the camera from Mario 64 as inspiration, because it just about sucks in every way. But there's a lot of movement mechanics from Mario 64 to take inspiration from, and that game's from 1996. It's one of the first 3D games out there. And from a movement perspective to this day, it kind of holds up in a lot of ways. It's a little bit janky and it's a little buggy, but the movement is generally pretty good if you had a better camera. The movement doesn't actually change that much between Mario 64 and like Mario Sunshine. And Mario Sunshine, for instance, is very obviously a huge inspiration, which, by the way, also like 2001. Huge inspiration for a game like A Hat in Time, which by this time also is like more than 10 years old, I realize, but let's ignore that. So yeah, old games can definitely be good inspiration sources. Especially if you look back at a game from like 20 years ago that's still remembered in 2025. That means there's something good about that game. That means that it's been remembered fondly and that it stood the test of time. And every game is going to have a little bit of jank, and especially like earlier 3D games, which I wouldn't classify this as early 3D anymore, but it is going to have more jank specifically in some like type of control or camera stuff. And just picking a random PS1 or PS2 game as inspiration, probably a bad idea. But this is where survivorship bias can work in your favor. If you just look back at the games from previous generations that are remembered fondly and with a lot of nostalgia, oftentimes, that's kind of like the survivorship bias there can work as a filter for actually like just getting good games to look at. So, is there any of these that just solo fight only using Sora? 1000% what I want. Right, let's see how these guys work in a bit more of a vacuum. Oh, this is timed. That's not ideal. Oh, can we not like do that? But still, we have a situation where they just pretty much always seem to be chasing us. Which, I think that's one of the big takeaways from this, is enemies don't have passive states. When an enemy is passive, it doesn't exist. If it exists, it's trying to kill you. And being worried about like getting like mob chased actually isn't that big a deal. Because that does happen, and if you just... a little bit of randomness within their like chasing and waiting patterns will offset them enough. Especially in normal gameplay. For that not to be a big issue. UI has a nice animation. You mean the round ones or the one that we were just stuck on for like forever? I guess they're both kind of nice. The round one is for like round 1, round 2, that kind of stuff. I wish I was good at making UI. Kind of suck at it, like real bad. That said, these mummies seem to have more of a passive thing going on, right? They just kind of hang out until they get the opportunity to attack, at which point they will... What the fuck? Why are you guys not attacking? Oh, there we go. I guess the mummies just in general have a very low rate of attack. Which is probably stemming from Kingdom Hearts 1, where they were the actual worst. But now that one is attacked, like... how long does it take before it attacks again? Because it's just jumping away. Yeah, it just refuses to fucking attack, man. And the flames in the bottom left. Oh, that's also, like, the command menu is kind of nice. It's true. Can people, like, not react to my TikTok shares when I'm streaming? Is the Titan Cup also Sora alone? Sora fights alone, Sora can use summons alone in this tournament. All that I care about is that it's an untimed thing where I fight as only Sora. Okay, so these guys. Interestingly enough, this game does seem like the enemies are less aggressive. They seem to have more time between attacks in general, where they just kind of walk around, and even if you are right up in their face, they don't attack. They just have a timer between their attacks when they're allowed to attack, and that timer seems to be longer. They also only seem to attack when you're actually close and the timer has run out. For the most part. Well, no, actually that one is attacking with me not being close. Still holds true that the timer seems to be insanely longer in this game than it was in 1. Which again, I have to assume is mostly down to the fact that this game much more often spawns many more enemies. So we kind of have this like correlation between amount of enemies and individual enemy downtime. So instead of doing something weird like I was planning to do, like having a overarching like attack queue manager or whatever, I think that is the way that they solve it for the most part. It's just not even on like a per encounter basis, just on like a per game basis almost. If they expect to be spawning in more enemies, each individual enemy has more downtime. So what ends up happening there is that you still have like 1 or 2 enemies attacking you at all times, more or less. But you require like 15 enemies to get that pattern to work out. Whereas in Kingdom Hearts 1, there were effectively always tried to attack you at all times, because the time between attacks was very short, but the average like enemy encounter was probably like 5 or 6 enemies. Where I do think my game probably leans a little bit closer to that 5 or 6 than that 10 to 15. And obviously there's not 10 to 15 enemies here. And there's also the fact to take into account that Kingdom Hearts 2 very much more is supposed to feel like a bit of like a power fantasy hack and slash, where Kingdom Hearts 1 is supposed to feel just more difficult. In a lot of aspects. The amount of abilities that you get in Kingdom Hearts 2, it's all supposed to be a lot more flashy. In that regard, it's not like Kingdom Hearts 1 is a Souls-like in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, it couldn't have been, because I think it's released before the first Dark Souls. But it leans a little closer to it, I feel, in some regards. Whereas Kingdom Hearts 2 and a lot of games beyond very much are designed in a way to just make you feel powerful before anything else. And Kingdom Hearts 1 isn't really overly concerned by that. That being said, these guys are rapidly attacking. But the snipers then aren't. Which is interesting, because we've got a couple of range-based enemies here, and usually the snipers are range-based. And they seem to be embodying some sort of teleporting and smacking me kind of behavior. So, oh, there we go, never mind. I was going to say, I wonder if I take out these projectile spammers, if we'll see the snipers actually do more range. Because that would imply some sort of overarching... It kind of feels like it, maybe. But that would imply kind of a overarching manager to keep track of that. But that guy still is just trying to smack me, so I think it is just randomness. But yeah, okay. So far, I think the way that it feels in 1, how it works, probably aligns a little bit more with what I'm looking into. But that does make me curious how Birth by Sleep does it, because obviously that is actually the best reference, because that is a game designed to be experienced without party members, as a whole, aside from like 1 or 2 fights. So I'm kind of curious how Birth by Sleep does it, because I, in my game, also clearly don't have party members, because there's way enough for me to be working on already, to also be taking on companion AI. So let's just kind of speed our way through the rest of this, seeing if there's any more interesting like encounters here or anything. But I kind of doubt it. I guess these, in a way, are kind of interesting because they do become invulnerable for stretches of time. Which actually does make me think. I realized the amount of passiveness in a lot of enemies before doing this stream today in the past, just casually playing. Because specifically those enemies, you need to wait until they attack so that you can stun them. And if they're the last ones around and you're just waiting for them to attack so you can progress, it takes forever. So, yeah. I guess what we have to take away from... Oh, Hercules. Fantastic. How about you go ahead and die? Not so wonderful now, are you, Wonder Boy? Oh no, a glowing fist! I'm so scared. I guess what we have to take away from Kingdom Hearts 2 is mostly downtime for non-attacking states, length, longer in KH2, likely due to expecting more enemies per encounter. But I think that's about everything that we're going to get out of that. So let's move on over to Birth by Sleep. And then I'll also, in the meantime, hello, thank you. Where's my cursor? There we go. Check if I have Final Chapter Prologue. I don't have it installed and it's like 30 gigs. So, I don't know if that's a great idea to be downloading during a stream. Because that might be bottlenecking my internet speed. Then again, it shouldn't, because that's download and streaming obviously is mostly upload. And if I download it now, it probably will be downloaded before I'm done with Birth by Sleep. Obviously, Kingdom Hearts 3 is a massive no-go, because that's like 70 gigs. So we can't really check that out. Because I have it installed on the Steam Deck, but I don't have any like Steam Deck docking or anything, so I can't do that. And it also kind of runs like ass on the Steam Deck compared to a PC. Let me just see if installing this is going to kill the stream or not. Just going to keep an eye on my bitrate for a moment. Because if I can get Final Chapter Prologue, I can just play the fragmentary passage like demo thing. So if I'm not dropping any frames, so it seems to be okay. Because that's effectively Kingdom Hearts 3 as a tech demo. And I don't really care for Dream Drop, to be honest. So what that downloads, and we seem to be good to go mostly. Let's check out Birth by Sleep. I should have a good amount of save files here. Meaning that I have one Ventus and one Arquest save file. Okay. Sure, man. I guess I'm gonna use the Arquest save file. That'll do just fine. Yeah, I'm not gonna do a Keyblade Graveyard though, because this place sucks. Let's go to... Radiant Garden is actually a pretty good place to check out everything that I want to know. Line of sight related stuff, group related stuff. Ooh, this game feels so sluggish in its movement now after playing 1 and 2 back to back. And the field of view is horrendous. I mean, I know that this was originally made for the PSP, but the field of view is so bad. Like even Dream Drop Distance, originally made for the 3DS, when they made the HD version for it, they pulled the camera back by a lot. Because they suddenly had more than like 100 pixels to work with. So they actually used it. Birth by Sleep, they still have the PSP field of view, which is kind of weird. Anyway, let's see how these guys do. So, first and foremost, they don't do anything for like a million years. But then once they are aggressive, they very quickly despawn compared to the previous games. They also seem to despawn more based on distance. than like the aggressiveness of them. Because that bird over there is going to despawn while it's still chasing me, yeah. Like, these guys have direct field of, like, line of sight to me. And when I get too far away, they just leave. I would imagine that that is a constraint that they put on due to the PSP hardware. To ensure that like you never have too many enemies spawned in at once, because I'm guessing they actually checked the distance to their spawn location. Can I lure these guys to the other side of the map is the real question. Or at some point they're just gonna... This bird is a fantastic test subject for this, as well as this ice thing. Okay, so it might actually just be the distance between me and them. Nothing to do with their like spawn location or anything. But it still very much seems to be distance-based, because if I run away, even though they're aggressive on me, they just despawn over there. So that answers one of the questions to do with line of sight. They probably like don't care for line of sight, if I had to guess. They just have a very strict like range-based despawn system, which is not what I'm going to do like at all. I don't think that's a good idea, because I do think that's a choice they made based on hardware constraints and not on like creative game design. But as far as their aggressiveness goes, they seem somewhat closer to Kingdom Hearts 2 than Kingdom Hearts 1 in the way that they work. So I think I'm going to do a hybrid. I think the doing attacks in the middle of a chase is a little weird in Kingdom Hearts 1. Once you actually start paying attention to it. Also, these guys are stuttery as fuck. I think this makes more sense. Having them just chase you, and when they can attack, they do the attack. It's also easier to program. But I think this makes more sense. It seems like these guys in general don't have anything to break up their like grouping. But I guess that is because in this game the groups are always going to be so small that that's not really an issue. Because the groups are not limited by like gameplay reasoning. I don't have Kuraga, what the fuck? The groups are not decided on size by like any gameplay reasoning. They're decided by hardware constraints in this game. So they don't really have to design the enemy AI around like not clumping up, because there's not going to be enough of them to clump up. Which is kind of what I've been... What the... Do I have XP Walker? Guess I do. That you one experience every step you take. And that's kind of what I've been doing so far as well, right? Just putting in very few enemies comparatively to even Kingdom Hearts 1. And just making sure that they don't clump up because there's just not enough of them to clump up. But I don't think that's like the way to deal with it moving forward. So I guess what we're gonna go for, we're still gonna play a bit of Fragmentary Passage to see how a more modern Kingdom Hearts game does it as well. But I think the way that I'm going to go about doing it is a hybrid between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. Which is to say, mostly like the searching mechanics of Kingdom Hearts 1 and the despawning mechanics of Kingdom Hearts 1. Because my dungeons are more alike with Kingdom Hearts 1 level design than they are Kingdom Hearts 2 level design. For the most part. But with the chasing mechanic of Kingdom Hearts 2. So they're not going to do weird attacks halfway through a chase when they just get bored. Some enemies might have a decision that they have a ranged attack, which they might decide to do halfway through a chase. That is a thing that I can do. But they're not just going to randomly do an attack that's going to miss anyway, just to break them up. That's not a thing that I think is a good idea to do. Giving them all a quick idle animation to play to break up like a clump of enemies a little bit, that seems like a bit like better of an idea. And deciding in a fairly definitive way what the average combat encounter is gonna look like in numbers, and figuring out what that means for the idle time between attacks is, I think, also relevant. One more thing that I do want to check out, actually, in both Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, which well, not in Kingdom Hearts 1, because Kingdom Hearts 1 you don't actually really get this as much, I don't think. But what happens if you have a bit of a clump of enemies chasing you, because we've had situations manufactured there where we did have that, and you actually run into them? Because they're all aggressively, actively trying to get to you to attack you. What happens if you give them the opportunity? Do they all attack at once? Or do they at that point actually have some sort of like hierarchy in which ones attack when? Because that might be relevant to take a look at. So I'm going to take a look at Kingdom Hearts 1 first, and then we'll also take a look at Kingdom Hearts 2. I kind of feel like, at least for Kingdom Hearts 2, they just all do attack when they get the chance. But we'll see. I think in Kingdom Hearts 1, they're also all going to like attack at the same time after you've been running away for a minute. But we'll have to experience it. We're at about 75% on the download, by the way, so it's we're getting close. I do still wonder how they actually put together these HP bars that start as circles and then turn into bars. Because it have to be two separate segments, right? It has to be like a shader that does the circular part up until like 75% of a circle, like 270 degrees. And then just a separate image slapped on top of that. That has to be the way they do it. I can't imagine how else they would even... How they would even make that otherwise. Yeah, so let's do Field Cup again. Not that I'm looking to replicate that HP bar system, I don't think, for my game. I'm taking a lot of inspiration from Kingdom Hearts, obviously, but I don't want to make it super, like, super Kingdom Hearts-like. Yeah, so they pretty much all attack at the same time. Because I'm also taking inspiration from a lot of other games. Yeah, very much all attack at the same time when they get the chance. Although, because they do their random attacks throughout. They actually don't seem to line up that much with their aggressive states, but yeah, when I just run in, they mostly all attack. Specifically, the Power Wilds also have a bit of a hard time clumping up. And since they all do different abilities at random, with like different wind-ups as well, they don't all attack you in a cluster. It kind of feels more coordinated, but I don't think it is. I do think it literally is just individualistic. Hey, I can attack now like 4 times at the same time. I don't think there's anything like particularly special happening with that decision making. But let's take a look at maybe another set of enemies, just to be sure. That wasn't a good set of enemies, by the way. Which is why I just murdered them. Neither is this, because it's, again, more Power Wilds. Specifically the Power Wilds that are kind of throwing me, because they're a bit weird in the way that they seem to idle. And that's my cue for the prologue to have downloaded. So we will start that game up in a moment. First we'll go back to 2 real quick. Yet another set of enemies that I don't actually care for testing this with, because they're all ranged enemies anyway. And again, Power Wilds. I think this entire cup might actually not be great for me. I will need to look at a different cup with different enemies. The shadows might be a decent one to take a look at. Once I take these out. Shadows actually seem to have a super low attack rate. Which makes sense, because they usually get spawned in with pretty big groups. Just not in this case. So, yeah, that adds up. Once again, I think I'm just gonna... Can I just quit out of this tournament? I can. I don't think this tournament has really given me the enemy sets that I want to test this out with. Let's do... Hades Cup. Yeah, that seems a little bit more like it. So they all chase me. And then they do all just kind of attack, don't they? It's just... Their AI doesn't always 100% attack. Sometimes it does in different action. So that's why they don't all attack at the same time, it seems. But they do see, okay, it's time to attack, let's do something. And they don't have a queue, they don't have a wait time. Okay, so here you'll actually see that the mummies, the white knights, are super aggressive in Game Watch 1 compared to what we just had in 2. which will also be a good example of whenever I get close enough, they will immediately start to attack. The attack pattern just takes fucking forever. They're not even that aggressive. Well, they're more aggressive than they are in 2. But see, you are constantly being attacked by different enemies. So there is a bit of a balancing act between their amounts and the downtime they give. Because if you do this properly, it seems like what they have in Kingdom Hearts here anyway, is that it just kind of lines up that something's always attacking you because of the timings, not because of any sophisticated programming, which I don't know if that means that I'm happy because it's just a matter of tuning the numbers, or if I am terrified because it is down to tuning the numbers. Because in a way, if there was some secret sauce that they were doing here that I could figure out, beyond just they tuned the numbers so well that it works out, I could replicate that. The numbers just working out between delays and amount of enemies is actually probably a lot more difficult to, to nail properly, to get that right. But yeah, you can see those two just attacked me in sync because I got close enough. Like right at the start of the round. They didn't have any coding yet that gave them a proper offset. So they literally attacked in sync. Alright, let's take a look at how Kingdom Hearts 2 deals with multiple enemies attacking once they're chasing you at once. Because I figure it's going to be the same. It's just going to be literally several different things attacking you at once. Which also means that more optimized meshes for all my enemies is probably going to be something to take a look at. Because I'm going to have to spawn in more of them. And that also then does come with the caveat that aside from like the GPU constraint that I have with spawning in enemies, which is tricky to test for me. I've got a Steam Deck for a reason. There's also a CPU constraint in spawning in too many enemies that actually ends up being a bigger issue more quickly. Because the GPU thing, you can just make enough LODs to the point where you can spawn in quite a few enemies, more than I'm going to be fighting at any given time. I did a test with the enemy standing still and doing nothing, running no behavior. Again, this is on my 4090, but I could spawn in like 200 of an average enemy, and the frame rate didn't like drop that much. So that's actually not that big of a deal, especially once I implemented some auto-generated, but still, LODs. It's just once I actually let them all move, the fact that they were all using the navigation system at the same time, which is not parallelized in any way, so that ended up stalling the game quite a lot and tanking the frame rate like super hard. Well, actually, I already know what Kingdom Hearts 2 does because we tested this a moment ago. The delay between these enemies' attacks are so huge that they won't attack at the same time because those delays syncing up over like that big a window is super unlikely. So I already know what this is going to do. I don't need to check. We just literally like had a whole thing about that. Yeah, let's play this. Which means that we actually do want to like not play this. I'm playing with controller anyway. I don't care about keyboard stuff. So yeah, spawning in more enemies is going to probably also mean that we have a bit more of an issue with the cost of path finding, especially if they're all going to be doing it at the same time. Because that was another thing that I was thinking about maybe changing. Why did you not close Kingdom Hearts 2? What the fuck? Touch to close. Exit game. Yes. There we go. This one, please. I was thinking about like introducing a movement queue where, again, we would keep track of the amount of sure, man. The amount of enemies that at any given time are moving, and if somebody wants to move, they submit a request to the game mode. Can I move? And then they wait. Hey, Unreal Engine, on when they can move. But if we want these to all be able to chase me at the same time, which seems like that's the way that these games at least work, that's something we also cannot do. So we need to start maybe looking into how to minimize the cost of having a lot of actors pathing at the same time. If that's at all something that you can do. Because, again, obviously the best way to optimize that is to chunk them up. To make a chunk of enemies path, and then have another chunk of enemies not allow to path until that, like, effectively, like, a semi sort of object pooling. Yeah, I don't have any save files for this, that makes sense. This game is also much louder. Holy shit, hold on. Yeah, sure. I probably could have actually chosen a PlayStation controller, couldn't I? But it doesn't seem like these games do that like object pooling, path chunking kind of thing. So I'm curious what this game is going to do, because if I recall correctly, this game, because it is now a PS4 game, it's running on Unreal 4. No tutorial, please. I do want to menu. Why the fuck are we at 1080p? Why the fuck are we at 60 FPS for that matter? Why does this think that I'm at a 1080p screen? Fuck off. Hold on, this is fucking with a couple of things real quick. Now it thinks I'm at a 40p screen. What the hell, man? It's also what... Let's go back to windowed. Yes. Borderless full screen. No. Just full screen. Sure, said it. Is it because I have my like desktop scaling set to 150%? Oh, there we go. It's kind of weird, man. But there we go. Okay. A little brighter. Especially for youth compression. A little brighter is better. Yeah, placing controls, please. And then we wanted to decrease the master sound. So as I was saying, this game, PS4, Unreal 4, if I recall correctly, this spawns in a shit ton more enemies as well. So I'm curious to see how this deals with that, because I kind of feel like this might have more of enemies just standing around and hanging back. But it might not. Fucking, I don't know. I also know that level 1 runs of this game in particular are brutal, because you actually start at level 50 usually. So, okay, so far they're all moving at the same time. But yeah, they also do have... Keeping in mind that these are basic shadows. An interesting note is that I think Aqua's movement speed increases when she's in combat. That is very interesting. Huh. That gives me some ideas. Especially since I also have the gameplay camera system now. What I could do is increase the movement speed for my character by a bit when in combat. And then also increase the field of view slightly in combat. Just have a slightly different camera setup for combat. Because this is definitely faster than we were just running. I'm going to check this in a moment once we're down to like the town square. But for now, yeah, they don't seem to like really have any movement queue system. At least not with the amount of enemies that I'm seeing right now. They just effectively have a... These have more of an idle state than the Kingdom Hearts 1 enemies. So they're much more like the Kingdom Hearts 2 enemies. But idle just means that they stand around for a bit. But I guess that is the way that they deal with enemies clumping up. Is just giving them, like, idle time. Alright. Let's kill these, because these, again, are just very basic enemies. So... I need some slightly more advanced enemies to see how they work. And I don't care about cutscenes. So maybe actually Aqua doesn't walk any faster here than she does in combat. But we can pretty seamlessly see that in a moment once we get to the town square, where we can go from non-combat to combat dynamically. Ooh, rail grinding is a fantastic idea to add as a platforming mechanic. I've been looking for more platforming mechanics to make my platforming more interesting. I'm not really a platforming mechanic, obviously. But it does make things slightly more interesting than just walking and jumping and not having anything else to do. So yeah, Aqua just has a walking and then a running state after she's walked for a bit, I think. Okay, so here we have a handful more shadows. Which ends up being more dangerous just because the overlap of something being aggressive, at least toward me, is higher. There's nothing like extra special happening here. It's just there's more guys. So the chance of one of them being in its, hey, let's go slap her in the face state is just higher. But I do think that this is too passive for what I'm trying to do. That said, I could hook this up to the difficulty system. I could. I really need to start implementing the difficulty setting. So that I can actually like, put that stuff to the test as well. But having that downtime on easy mode just be a little bit higher as well, and lower on hard mode, seems like a kind of cool thing to do. Because I'm trying to... If I'm going to do a difficulty setting, I don't want it just to be enemies have more health and deal more damage on higher difficulties. I want those difficulties to actually affect the AI as well. So I'm not going to program entirely different AI behavior for different difficulty settings, because that would be insane. Although that would be really cool. Admittedly, having a different version of a state tree for every enemy that does slightly different stuff based on difficulties. I'm not going to do that, because that would be... that would literally would kill me, I think. But hooking up things like post-attack waiting and that kind of stuff. Deciding that waiting range based on the difficulty setting probably would be kind of neat. So many cutscenes in this game, it's kind of stupid. Also, randomly, this is the Kingdom Hearts game with cosmetics. Nobody knows why. They weren't in Kingdom Hearts 3, like, at all. Okay, so here we should get into a fight in real time. Holy shit, there's cutscenes everywhere.
If I find enough gears, I can restore the road.
We should at some point be getting into enemies that spawn without cutscenes. While we have that little camera move. Yeah, that doesn't actually make me move any faster. That was just me being stupid. We've got different kinds of enemies though, so let's actually look at what they do. So far they mostly seem like just flying shadows, not gonna lie. They don't really do anything. They literally don't do anything. Holy hell. The pushover of the pushovers. Alright, let's just keep on moving until we find any actually interesting enemies, because so far this very much does seem like an even more passive version of what Kingdom Hearts 2 was showing me. Which, again, I don't know, it kind of feels like it's a little too forgiving. Alright, let's see what this does. That's a bit more like it. So, a lot of these attacks are range attacks though. So that guy doesn't like actually care to move, he just spouts projectiles at me. Maybe now that I've knocked him off his thing, will he do something different, or is he literally just a projectile dispenser? Well, he can move now, which makes sense because now he's actually on a nav bash. But aside from that, he is just a flame dispenser. Okay. It's kind of weird that Kingdom Hearts 1 was the most informative... Yeah, Aqua. The most informative thing that we've done here, because otherwise everything that I'm looking into is kind of... And maybe that's in its own way informative, but everything that I'm looking into, aside from Kingdom Hearts 1, is mostly just... Enemies largely seem to just wait for you to kill them, and not really put up much of a fight. There's not a lot of aggressiveness to it. Which again, that might actually be the lesson we need to take away from this. But right now, my issue is that my enemies are too passive. So, I actually don't think that that's a good lesson to take away at all. if anything, I probably was trying to replicate what I know from Kingdom Hearts 2 a little bit too much. And now looking at it with a closer lens, I'm realizing that that's just too passive. But it might also be less of an issue, especially if I make the enemies always aggressive, if I just spawn in more of them. I've been really conservative with the amount of enemies that I spawn in. If nothing else, whatever game I'm using as a reference point, I need more enemies at once. Like 4 or 5 is just not enough. Let's move on to the next section of the game. And see if there's anything useful in there. And if not, I think we've done all of our research. Which also is going to be probably a little bit of the last Kingdom Hearts and combat-related research that we're doing anytime soon. Because once I have this in place, I've done bosses, I've done basic enemy AI. At that point, what other combat stuff is there, right? I need to start actually implementing those lessons at some point. But what I've been thinking, as I was talking about earlier in the stream, is that the plans that I've had for genre shifts in my game are probably a little overly ambitious. Like, I had one plan for a turn-based RPG segment, and I actually coded most of the code systems for it. Which is where the turn-based RPG tutorial series came from. It's just I was developing that, and I figured might as well make it into a tutorial series. But thinking about actually implementing that and designing it and making and placing art for it, just for a 15-minute segment of the game, that's not going to be too deep anyway, because it's just one segment. I can't make an entire turn-based RPG fully fleshed out within that. Is maybe a little bit overkill. So maybe what I'm thinking is I need to... Very interesting. I need to lean a little bit more into mini game style stuff. So I was actually thinking maybe we should play a little bit of Spyro. Because Spyro 2 and 3 throw so many gameplay shifts at you on a scale where they are very small gameplay shifts that sometimes actually do rely on basic actual normal game code, that might actually be a good inspiration for me to take inspiration from, rather than making effectively 6 entire extra games on top of the game that I'm already making. Because I do want this game to be released sometime before 2050, if at all possible. So maybe scaling back that little ambition, not a bad idea. So I think next week on Friday we'll probably be streaming Spyro. On Tuesday, obviously, we'll be actually doing some game development directly in Engine, which I don't know yet what we'll be doing. But we'll be doing something. This does feel good though, getting those room just nukes. And better movement always feels nice as well. It is interesting that the air dash is different from the ground dodge, because that way they can put a longer cooldown on the air dash, which maybe I should also do. Because it's fairly simple. When I dash, I can just either do a ground or an air dash. There can be different abilities. That's super easy, obviously. But one of the issues that I've had is I want the ground version of my dash do not have a too long cooldown. There we go. Because that's also what you use to dodge attacks. But the air dash having a very like low cooldown also is an issue, because that lets you cheese a lot of platforming. So maybe I do just need to break that up into different abilities. They can be the same. Well, they probably shouldn't be the same visually. But they can be similar visually. But I think splitting it up into 2 different abilities maybe makes sense. Can even be just, honestly, a child of the ground one with just a different cooldown effect. Also, love that this is so easy on standard mode. I know that this is the first boss of the game, but this is so easy on standard mode that I don't actually need to interface with any of the boss mechanics at all. I can just kind of... Oh, I have shot lock as well. Why not? Let's finish it off with a shot lock. There we go. Alright, that's a new area. Let's see if there's anything interesting for enemy AI stuff here. I think this is mostly puzzles actually in this world. Which is not ideal for what we're doing. Okay. I know 1 or 2 of these... I think this is actually a combat one. 1 or 2 of these challenges are combat. The rest are mostly puzzles. Right. I think this is a puzzle. Oh, there's actually combat here, never mind. But it's not really interesting combat, because it's just, what, 2 enemies? So I don't really care. And I do think this also ends with a boss fight, which, again, is not what I'm looking for. Then again, the boss fights in Birth by Sleep, I just thought might actually still be interesting to look at. It's not what I wanted to do. But sure. Is this just a puzzle, or is this just like moving on? Yeah, there we go. So this is the anti-aqua fight. Or do you get an anti-aqua fight after every single one of these now? I don't remember. I think this is just the one where you fight anti-aqua. Which also is the super boss in this game, actually, is just a stronger version of this fight. Kind of stinks. That teleport effect is actually kind of interesting, where the particles stay in like the skeleton mesh form for a moment before getting like shot off. I wonder how that works. I guess you like apply a force over their lifetime, and you just for the first X time don't apply a force. That probably is the answer. Okay, so where's this bitch? So that made it ridiculously easy. Holy shit. That just destroys her. There we go. Yeah, I don't know that this is really giving me much information. Seems like this demo specifically doesn't really have that much combat going for it, which is kind of weird. For a game series that is like super about combat. That's just one chest that I remembered being there. I kind of felt proud of myself for remembering that. Is this the super big combat room then? Yes, it is. Well, super big, I don't know. Doesn't seem like there's anything that's super big combat about this game. Yeah, I figure we've kind of just found our answer, and that is later Kingdom Hearts games. It'll be worth taking a look at 3 maybe still, but I don't have that installed again, so I'll do that maybe on my own, on my Steam Deck. But it seems like later Kingdom Hearts games tend to spawn in more enemies. This one clearly doesn't. And the enemies individually are just less aggressive, as in they just hang around and stand around for a longer time. So what I probably need to do is spawn in more enemies than Kingdom Hearts 1. Make them more passive than Kingdom Hearts 1 on an individual basis, but not go as far as Kingdom Hearts 2 does. I think that is the balance that I'm looking for. And whatever those numbers look like to accomplish that, how would I know? I guess we just have to kind of figure it out as we go. So, yeah, I think we're going to leave it there for right now. It's been an informative 2 or so hours of playing video games. Mostly the first hour was very informative, and everything after that was like, hey, maybe Kingdom Hearts 1 being a little bit of the less popular of all the games. At least all the main games, probably actually did the most interesting stuff with the AI behavior. Everything else actually kind of seems dumbed down in comparison, which, again, it's probably a reason for that has to do with the sheer amount of characters existing. And on the PS2, that might have been a technical thing as well, because more enemies means that the enemies probably needed to be a little bit dumber. But there's also a level design element to it, because again, Kingdom Hearts 2 generally has more open, more flat area, so the line of sight consideration probably wasn't that big a deal. Whereas in Kingdom Hearts 1, breaking line of sight to enemies is a thing that happens a lot more due to the way that the levels are designed. And I think I have a bit of both. In my game, I have open areas. Like the Colosseum, right? The Colosseum thing is still an open area, where they're effectively just always aggressive toward you. But knowing this now, and having experimented with this, and having analyzed this, I can now use that as information to my benefits. If I want an area to be more dangerous, making it an open, flat area will make it more dangerous. Because the enemies aren't going to lose track of you, so they're always going to be more aggressive. Then it'll also balance it out with the size of that area, because if that area is massive, obviously that danger gets diluted then again, unless you spawn an appropriate scaled amount of enemies, but at some point you're going to be spawning in too many enemies. So this is all information that is good to like have in my brain as considerations while I'm fine-tuning these enemies. But like this week I've been working on art, and I'm probably going to be working on art quite a bit next week as well. So I don't know if I'm going to be doing a lot of enemy related stuff. And I also need to re-rig and reanimate a fair few of the enemies because their rigs don't actually have root bones, which is kind of sucky. At which point I might also look into doing like super quick and dirty retopologizing for most of them to have them be a bit like more optimized. If I'm going to be spawning in more of them, this seems like the proper moments to also make sure that they're not too high poly. Because some of these enemies that are fairly basic are still like 50,000 polys in their highest LOD. And I think we can get that down. So those are the two main considerations that I'm going to be spending the next like 2 weeks on, I think, is enemies. And art. I've got about like 3.5 more weeks until my current like goal, my current version needs to be finished to submit to Epic Mega Grants. It's gonna be a long couple of weeks for me, working very hard with probably way too little sleep. But we're doing good. Progress has been very, very cool to experience. But for now, I'm gonna head out. I'll be back on Tuesday, working on something live on stream. Maybe we'll do some of the enemy re-rigging on stream on Tuesday. How about that? Because I'm probably not going to be doing that before Tuesday. So that seems like a thing that we can do on Tuesday. It's pretty like chill, pretty easy to do. So yeah, let's maybe do that on Tuesday, unless I have a different idea on the day itself. And then next Friday, we'll be looking forward a little bit more to the rest of development, and I'll be playing Spyro a little bit for inspiration on more manageable sized mini games that maybe can even take advantage of pre-existing mechanics. So yeah, see ya. I don't have a cursor to end the stream with. This is kind of embarrassing. Where's my cursor? There we have it. Bye!